Heat have been actively trying to acquire Damian Lillard. The Portland Trailblazers kind of seem hot and cold. There are even recent reports that the Portland Trailblazers haven't really entertained any offers in the last month or so, and they don't really seem fully engaged and fully serious to try to trade away Damian Lillard. I don't know why. I think it's time for both sides to move on. Maybe Portland is hoping that the closer they get to training camp, things will kind of ramp up and teams will kind of become more desperate and be willing to part with more. The Heat, maybe they can kind of figure something out. We'll see how this long drama works out. But as with all things, it very well might not for the Miami Heat. And the problem is you can never count out Miami, right? Miami's a team that you can never just say, all right, they're going to be dead in the water, right? Every year you think it's going to happen, and then they're in the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. But they were a play-in team last year, and very likely this year, when you look at the Eastern Conference, it is very possible that they could be a play-in team again next year. They lost some key pieces. Yes, they added some pieces, and we'll see how it gels. But Miami feels like a team that needs something else, right? That need a scorer. A guy that can close down the stretch and just be more of a natural scorer, right? Jimmy's kind of been the go-to guy, but he's not really a pure natural scorer. He is an incredible talent, incredible player. He can go get you 40, but it's through his just strength, determination, will of you're not going to stop me, right? Where he doesn't have, the tools that some of the other just more gifted natural scorers have. But they can't just have anybody, right? I don't think if they went and acquired a Malik Monk, that's the answer. I think that would help, but I don't think that's the answer. They need somebody that has the ability to close, be a consistent game in and game out scorer, but also a guy that has been there and done that, or a guy that has been in moments and has had the success. And so what would Miami's plan B look like? And one of the teams that really come to mind that I think make a lot of sense for Miami are the Chicago Bulls, and particularly DeMar DeRozan. And we'll touch on Zach LaVine here in a minute, but I think DeMar DeRozan is the most likely scenario because I think he would be the most obtainable. His age and him being in the final year of his contract, I think would kind of deter other potential suitors. I also think that the return that you would have to give for a DeMar DeRozan would be far less than what you'd have to do for a Damian Lillard. And DeMar DeRozan fits a lot of what Miami needs, right? A guy that can go get you 25 a game, night in and night out. DeMar DeRozan has been one of, if not the best closers in the game, not this past year, but the year earlier. He led the league in closing minutes in crunch time. He was the most clutch player in the league, and he was top 3, I think, last year. So he's a guy that is not afraid of the moment, that can hit the big shots, that has had playoff success, that outside of running into LeBron, of course, is a guy that's kind of in a situation that he needs to get out of. Chicago, yes, they re-signed Vu, but they're kind of in this purgatory where they just need to get out. And they've already entertained the idea of trading Zach LaVine and have fielded offers and stuff. So it kind of feels like if Chicago is on the outside looking in, or even if they're kind of teetering at the we're the 9th seed right now, and we're 3 games out of, the 7th or 8th seed, I could see the Bulls saying, all right, it's time to move on. They should have done it last offseason, and especially during the trade deadline, but they decided, no, let's go a different route, when I think you could have gotten more for DeMar DeRozan. You could have gotten more for Zach LaVine, Vu, guys like that. Especially DeMar. Last year, the Lakers were in a point of desperation. I think you would have gotten whatever you wanted for DeMar DeRozan from the Lakers. And I think teams like the Knicks probably would have given you whatever you wanted for Zach LaVine because they were kind of question mark at the time, although they had some success, but they were doing everything they could to get Donovan Mitchell. I think you could have sold high on Zach LaVine. Vu, there were several teams that could have used a center. and then guys like Alex Caruso would be a solid addition. Could Miami figure out a way to go get like Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan? I think that would be massive. I wouldn't even mind if Chicago got like DeMar DeRozan and like Vu, right? And then play Bam at the 4. That wouldn't be bad at all, in my opinion. But regardless, however it shapes up, I really do think DeMar DeRozan is a guy that makes a lot of sense for Miami, that would be obtainable, that provides a lot of what Miami would need from Damian Lillard. Now, obviously, Damian Lillard is the better shooter, especially from three-point range, although DeMar DeRozan is a super efficient mid-range scorer and a guy that has no problems getting buckets, but he's not the three-point shooter that Damian Lillard is, right? He's not the floor spacer that Damian Lillard is. So there would be the question of, like, you know, do teams kind of pack the paint and try to make things difficult? And if Miami's hot and they're hot, from 3, that is, then so be it, possibly. But still, it would he would immediately be the best scorer on Miami, right? And that is something that is very valuable. Now, obviously, Zach LaVine would probably be the better option just because of his age, and he's a better three-point shooter, and he still provides you that same level of scoring, right? But there have been questions with him as far as like injury concerns, which DeMar DeRozan, he's been a model of consistency and a model of just health. So that really is nice too, where Zach LaVine, he's got some question marks in that regard. Him just kind of elevating teams has been a real question mark with him. But I think in the right situation, the right role, right? Miami's culture, I think, would be huge for him. I also think like the things that Zach LaVine aren't good at, Miami is very good at. And same thing with DeMar DeRozan, right? I think that that's the beauty of like, Miami's one of the few teams that could just go get a scorer and it wouldn't have the potential of being clunky, hurt your team, or like how's the fit, right? Because your 2 stars currently are very unselfish, do the dirty work, which is very rare for your top 2 players, right? Usually you have the role guys that do the dirty work. But no, Jimmy Butler is the guy that he'll sacrifice his body. He'll die for loose balls. You know, he'll guard the best player on the other team. He'll do whatever he has to win. And I think that if you could bring in a guy like a Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, I think that would be huge for Miami. But Zach LaVine, like Chicago seems to have like a ridiculous asking price on Zach LaVine. I also think he would probably cost more than what you could get for DeMar DeRozan, and is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Where like DeMar DeRozan, if it works, you're probably very good, and you could re-sign him for a couple more years, and he kind of fits like Miami's timeline with Jimmy Butler and stuff like that. So like when DeMar and Jimmy retire, you basically have all this cap space and you can kind of retool. Where Zach LaVine, you're kind of locked into long-term, and if it doesn't work, you're kind of stuck. Where DeMar DeRozan, if it doesn't work out, you could just let him go, and you freed up whatever cap space you freed up, right? Like, so there's pros and cons for both, but I just think Miami would have to give up probably more than what it would be worth, or more than they could potentially give. I think they'd still have to kind of work stuff out, and, you know, although maybe Chicago values, you know, like a Tyler Hero more, or values some of the young guys more than the Blazers do, because that's kind of been the reports that the Blazers aren't really high on any of the kind of youth that Miami has, and they don't have a need for Tyler Hero, so it just inherently doesn't really make sense. But maybe a team like the Bulls is looking at it like, hey, you know, Tyler Hero could be our replacement for a DeMar DeRozan, for a Zach LaVine, something like that. Like, I think that may be more persuasive. So maybe you could get a Zach LaVine for cheaper, right? Maybe you could do a package of Zach LaVine and, like, I don't know, Duncan Robinson or something like that. Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson for like a Zach LaVine. That could be a possibility. But at the end of the day, I think DeMar DeRozan would be very obtainable. I think he still makes a lot of sense. He reunites with Kyle Lowry, and those two have chemistry, and, you know, it could kind of make DeMar's acquisition and just settlement easier, right? And kind of give him somebody that he's close to and connected to, and can kind of help that transition from like, okay, I'm going from the Bulls culture and their style of play and all this stuff to Miami and their style of play. And like the one flaw that DeMar DeRozan has is defense. But Eric Spoelstra has shown he's really good at getting guys that aren't very good defensively and putting them in good defensive positions, right? So I really think that DeMar DeRozan would have that impact on Miami that they would need. Now, would it be as good as Damian Lillard? Maybe not, but maybe it would, right? Like maybe it is something, because you got to remember, Dame has always been the guy, right? Like his number two, the best number two he's ever had was CJ McCollum, which is like a lesser version of Damian Lillard. And on paper, it looks like it's a seamless fit and it makes a world of sense. But is there a conflict? Is there a struggle where, DeMar DeRozan, he's been a number two. He's been, a guy even on the Bulls. He's right. Like his personality, stuff like that, I think has the potential to be seamless, right? Like I'm not saying that Damian Lillard wouldn't be or that it won't be, but there are questions of how seamless would it look? Because the idea is like, oh man, Dame comes in and it's just a match made in heaven. But is it? We've seen things that look great on paper not translate well and not have the success that is thought to have. And it's not like, look, and for those that are like, well, DeMar DeRozan's old, like he's a year older, I think, than Damian Lillard. So it's like, it's still the same idea, still same timeline, still gives you the same type of just scorer, pure bucket getter that Miami really needs. So, I don't know. It's just a thought. But anyway, as always, I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you like the idea? Do you hate the idea? Somewhere in between.